Okay, well, welcome to the second of a four-part, four-point training series. I'm Brianne Durham. I'm the director of Washington Main Street, and we are very happy to be offering these quick 30-minute interviews focused on best practices for the Main Street four-point approach. We've been hearing from a lot of you this year that 2021 is the year of back to basics. You want to really reconnect with what makes the Main Street movement this tried and true approach over 40 years. It's about dedicated volunteers, well-oiled organizations, and a focus on our guiding framework. And so along those lines, I'm going to do a very brief introduction to the four-point approach. This is truly asset-based community development at its finest. Framework helps you leverage the things that make your community unique. It's entrepreneurs, it's local history, the built environment, and an engaged public to foster sustainable local economies and connected communities. Today, we are diving into design, and I'm very grateful to Stephanie Button, Executive Director of the Historic Downtown Kennewick Partnership, Conchetta Glooney, co-owner of Layered Cake Artistry and co-chair of their design committee, and Carrie Ann Clark, construction manager for JK Monarch Fine Homes and a member of the design committee. Majority of this training is going to be hearing from them about what makes Kennewick's design team so very strong. But first, a very brief primer on design. We like to think of this point as the crew that is improving the appearance of everything that is visual in the district and creating places for people. We can break this point down into three areas that starts with educating the public, helping citizens, helping property owners and business owners really understand financial incentives, design techniques, and certainly local history and its significance. And there are so many ways to make education fun and engaging. Also about formulating plans, and this is something that I'm very excited for the Kennewick folks to talk to you more about. You're casting this bold vision and helping the city engage in the types of change that its community members want to see. And part of that can be, proposing recommendations and being part of that sort of longer range planning process. It is also absolutely about getting things done in the here and now. Projects that convey care and character. Again, you're sometimes even creating, fostering places that offer comfort, flexibility, and activity. And one of the tenets of Main Street is that small projects really matter. So you're creating momentum and energy in your district, even through some of the smallest initiatives. And so with that, I'm very eager to turn it over to these three and ask you to start out with, what does design mean to your community? Why do you think it's so important for Kennewick?
Anyone want to jump off and do the why is design so important to our community in Kennewick?
I think Kennewick's had a pretty varied level of design over the years. So it's gone through many different phases, and we're kind of in a lull where we're starting to pick back up. So we're starting to see more interest downtown, and design is always going to be a big part of that because it's a driver and a driving factor for why people want to come see what's down there.
Yeah, I agree. Oh,
no,
go ahead. Okay, I was just going to say, I also think that design tells a story. So I think that, are you on one extreme, is this a really, a dumpy area? People aren't going to want to hang around there and, shop. That's not really where you want to be, right? You always hear people referring to like, oh, I found this really cute, this really cute place. And you want something to be inviting. You want to, are you the funky place that has all these, murals down there? Are you more, more artsy? Are you this, we have a lot of old buildings. So it's going to help tell a story and then pull in, I think, a certain clientele and a customer base based on that story as well.
Exactly. And, good design, or just the design that you have in any community, it creates a sense of place and a mood and a feeling. When I first started coming to downtown before I was hired as its ED, came down with my mom and she's like, wow, I like how downtown feels. Like, it feels good down here. It feels different from anywhere else in the Tri-Cities. It's like I'm on my own little mini vacation. And that's always stuck with me, since, becoming the ED and working on design projects. And, to Carrie Ann's point that Kennewick has had all of these different, rises and falls of design and building. I think an important thing for us is when you're centering the environment of your community, when you're trying to use place and environment to tell stories, but also to communicate what your community is about, it's important to remember the frame of your community. So here in downtown Kennewick, we were started really in 1904. We're an old community. And when that happened, we were built at the scale of people. We didn't have big cars. We had people and horses and carriages, and then slowly cars came onto the scene. And I think that's part of Kennewick's charm. And when you're thinking about your community, what's the scale at which your community has been set up? And what are those quirks and things that you can embrace as you revitalize and you continue to incorporate the new as you're looking forward to making your community an inviting place to be and to do business? And I think that's kind of at the crux of design, is how do we not just maintain, but how do we continue to innovate and think forwardly so that our communities can continue to be a place where things happen and people want to spend their time.
Well said, all of you. And I think, like your mom identified, Stephanie, people have sort of this visceral reaction to being in a downtown that feels comfortable and feels at their scale, and they might not really be able to put their finger on what it is that makes them feel so good. But that's our job, as Main Streeters, as design committee volunteers, to really help them have those experiences and accentuate the design that our districts inherently have. So that kind of transitions us to the committee itself. What about Downtown Kennewick's design committee are you so proud of? What's so strong about it and why?
I am so incredibly proud of our design committee, especially with Carrie Ann and Conchetta coming on. Like I'm sure many programs throughout the state, your committees are going to ebb and flow. Sometimes one committee might be stronger than the other. It's cyclical. It's kind of based on who is available to be engaged and what their passions are and when they align with the goals of your organization. And of course, that's going to evolve and shift. And right now we're at a great place in downtown Kennewick where there's so much potential, but that potential can only be actualized when you have people as passionate about the place. And with Conchetta and Carrie Ann and with Ted and Bob and with Emily, who's our partner at the city, that is a crew of individuals who have varying histories and experiences with downtown Kennewick, but the shared commonality is a true passion and commitment to making downtown Kennewick spectacular.
I think a lot of it for me started with the building behind me that you see was the building that my husband and I purchased about 5, almost 6 years ago now. That was when it was originally built, and I'm finding out 1914 now. We thought it was 1908, but it's 1914. And pulling back all of the layers to find what was originally there, finding the history, and then building on that as our design. And Conchetta's done some of that herself. You can see that beautiful wall behind her is something that they revealed within their building. And then they built on that design.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both of you. And I think that passion is a big part of it because, I mean, we all have full-time jobs, and this is sort of, something that we do outside of that. And if you don't have people that are really passionate about, the project and downtown Kennewick itself, well, you're going to want to put less time into it during your off hours, right? Overtime and stuff like that. But we've got a really great crew, like Stephanie said, also that has different levels of experience. We have people like Ted and Bob that have been around since, the design committee inception, I believe, and really saw a lot of different phases in downtown Kennewick. So they got a lot of when we need info on background, or maybe we start to discuss a project, and then they'll say, oh, actually, we've already done that. So here's the information. We did that 10 years ago. And then I'm a newbie, so I think maybe a positive thing that I might bring is that I'm not necessarily tied to some of these traditions and things in downtown Kennewick. I'm like, let's just tear it down and do something, new, and then everybody has to rein me in. But we have like a complete, you know, spectrum of people on this team that make it, when we all come together, it makes it really strong.
Yeah,
That's actually a theme from yesterday too, that a mix of folks who have really good organizational memory and those who are just bringing fresh ideas and aren't necessarily held back by any kind of preconceived notions. Like that's such a good dynamic. What were you gonna say,
Really?
Karen?
well, just building people on your team that can help. Like he's a retired architect. He has so much experience in design, so he can help direct us in many ways that, you know, I have a background in drafting and architecture and construction, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I know all the workings of how commercial things work in a downtown. I'm used to doing residential and I build homes, but so it's a different dynamic, but bringing in people that have that knowledge that can really help build you up and help you move forward with steps that, you know, where you're hitting walls and you can't get anywhere with them. You need people that have the knowledge to help move you forward.
Were there any other sort of background, Stephanie, you mentioned some names, but can you describe some of the other folks involved?
So Bob, he is also retired, but he worked for Builders Hardware. And so he's got connections to industry professionals who have lent their help and expertise, so we've been able to utilize their services. Emily Estes Cross is actually with the city of Kennewick, and she is amazing. But I think this is an opportunity for any program to engage city staff in your programming, invite them to be a part of a committee, if only so that they are clued in and understand, but the knowledge and the experience and the recommendations that Emily as a City of Kennewick staff person can lend to the design committee has been invaluable, whether it's helping us make the correct connections with people at facilities or parks or permitting, but also we are active partners with our city, or maybe you're more active with your Chamber of Commerce or your port. Make sure that these committees are a great place for them to be involved and plugged in. And Emily is also very passionate about downtown Kennewick, about Kennewick in general, but it's because we all recognize the kind of the jewel that this is, that it has history and legacy, that it's built at the scale of people, and that just the way it is in our community, it's really a concentration of our local and small businesses. And so downtown Kennewick is the medium, it's the platform for people to engage and connect in that way. So they see our importance in that way. And we've had other people on the design committee. We had Terry Walsh, who is retired from the city of Kennewick. Emily has replaced her, but people kind of flit in and flit out as a project appeals to them. But I think it's important to always be bringing people to the table, engaging them where their passion is, and seeing where that lends to other projects, whether it's within that one committee or they might naturally bridge to another effort. Because I think that's the part of Main Street and the 4-point approach that I find really great is how our committees are designed to work together.
Yeah, well said. And I had a sort of similar experience as a local director in that our design committee was actually a place where multiple city departments came together in a very constructive, positive way. We actually had we had representatives from parks, public works, and planning on our design committee, which felt like a lot. We definitely had the private sector represented too, but those city partnerships were really important for us as well. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. The next question I want to ask you is just sort of an invitation to tell a story or give an example that highlights the success of your design committee. Is there sort of one big or even small initiative that you want to share about? I know you're in the middle of a really big one right now, but maybe there's something, yeah.
Well, we're all relatively new to it. I've only been part of the design team for 2 years now. So we haven't really done a whole lot. Obviously, the past year has been a little bit of a challenge as far as getting anywhere. So our experience isn't huge, but our passions are big. So we're starting, you know, with this fire and this fever of wanting to do things. And I think Conchetta and Elena with their building, and then my husband and I with our building, has brought a lot of that energy to the forefront, where we want to be part of it and help spark that with a lot of other building owners and even business owners that are downtown.
Carrie Ann is speaking to this energy that and this momentum that has been building in our community for the last couple of years. And that is new folks coming to downtown that are inspiring folks that have been here to make investments in their building, private and public investments that are coming from now different sectors. And COVID has been very challenging, but it allowed us to be creative and innovate from a programmatic perspective. So to give context to what I'm going to talk about, we closed down our streets for 8 weeks for an alfresco experience that allowed businesses to expand into the streets, our restaurants to take advantage of outside dining so that our businesses could stay open in a very challenging time. And while we're not able to always have our streets closed, it brought so much vibrancy and energy and positivity to downtown Kennewick. And I have people, when are you going to close the streets again? Well, we're working on a different solution, but this sparked this idea of the importance of place making. And we were successful in applying to be one of the 90-day grant activation projects through the Washington State Main Street Association. So that's our huge project, and design is definitely heading it. And it wouldn't be possible without the design committee and without these two ladies in particular who are kind of co-leading this exercise. But this is where we are taking a space that is underutilized, a parking lot. I'm sure there are participants right now who are like, what are you doing to a parking lot? Parking is so important. I'm not wearing my more parking, more problems t-shirt for this. About it. But we see an opportunity in this underutilized space that is truly underutilized to create space that our downtown is missing, that fills some gaps, and the design, the characteristics, the feeling, the amenities that we want to bring into this space. This is where design as a committee meets the ideology that our organization is trying to do in downtown Kennewick, that meets the 4-point approach. And I'm gonna kick it off to Carrie Ann and Conchetta, because you guys had some very like really poignant observations about what the space needs, because they both came up with the initial layout of how the space could be utilized. Why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Carrie Ann.
Sure. Well, we needed a town square. There's no real gathering space in downtown Kennewick. And so in order to create a sense of community, this parking lot's like right in the middle of downtown, like the center of kind of the hub of everything. So if we could take that space and utilize it as somewhere for people to gather and get together, or grab lunch and sit down, or, you know, play with their kids or take their dogs, or, you know, whatever it is, and we can help create a space that's comfortable to be there, it'll help draw people and want to keep them down there, versus just running down, going to a store that they were going to go to and then leaving, or running down and, you know, or they're going to go hang out in the bar for a while, or whatever their desire is, at least keeping them and drawing them down there and wanting them to continue to be there because it's comfortable.
Yeah, and then specifics of what we kind of decided to do in order to make it a gathering place. Well, I mean, we've got the speakers all around, which is great, right? There's going to be music pumping into that space. There's going to be lots of cafe seating, brightly colored area where we're going to have some food truck pads in there. We're going to have, eventually what we'd like to do is have a stage area where we can have, you know, that can function as a place for, obviously, for live music, or for, you know, all sorts of different programming. And what else we're putting up there? We're putting up some art. So there's going to be lots of things in there. But I also wanted to mention, I know that project is sort of taking a lot of our time right now, but a couple projects that we have on the back burner that are going to be really great, and really just feel like, I just feel like this is such great groundwork for the design committee. We had talked about Carrie Ann is sort of heading up design guidelines for a lot of the businesses here, because I think somebody mentioned earlier that a lot of people that, you know, renters and property owners down here, they would like to maybe improve the facades of their building or do things, and they just want a little bit of help. So we're going to come up with, well, Carrie Ann really is doing a set of guidelines and, you know, standards that we think, hey guys, like maybe if we can all adhere to these as best as possible, and we're really going to have a streamlined look that's going to be really, you know, visually appealing and sort of great. And also here's how we can, you know, help you achieve that. So maybe here, if, you know, we have a supplier that you can get a 10% discount on paint. We talked about in September hosting an open house where we have, different suppliers that we've used for tile, lighting, exterior signage and all that sort of thing, and really helping the property owners down here, not just saying, here's some, guidelines that we want you to, stick to. It's like, well, if we all do this together, then it would be, really great. And here's how we can help you do that. So we're really excited about that project as well.
Give direction, at least, be available to people and not there to tell them what to do, but be there to help guide them.
You've hit on all of the kind of 3 buckets we discussed at the very beginning. Like the guidelines are just really helpful, friendly education for property owners. And then one of the things I just love so much about the plaza is that it is both casting this long-term kind of bold vision and doing something in the short term, because I think there's a lot of power in design committees, especially those that do have a good city relationship, trying things out, like doing kind of that tactical urbanist version of it. Like with the plaza, there'll be paint on, the parking lot area as a way of showing kind of how a more permanent, use of color or structure or what have you can kind of delineate the space. And it's going to be a shorter term function with a much longer term potential. And I think that's a really great example of how you can get to some of the big dreams that feel like, they're so hard to kind of bite off.
Yep, baby steps.
Maybe, yes, small projects building on bigger gains is an important part of design. And I think something that, when you're in the middle of doing a project, whether it's big or small or long-term thinking, but people see the impact. I can tell, and I have heard from people in the downtown, both who have businesses down here, but folks who they're rediscovering downtown Kennewick. They're impressed at the changes they've seen. They have a memory of Kennewick from 20 years ago, and they're coming here now and it feels and looks and acts differently. And when they see active investment, they see people caring about a place, it energizes them. They want to find out how they can be involved, or they're excited, or they're intrigued at the very least. And I think, when you're thinking about your design program and what you're doing, whether it's a big project or a small project, whether it's a group of you getting together, wearing matching t-shirts and picking up trash on a Saturday, that leaves an impact. And it shows people that there are folks who care where you're at. And I think it will give people either, I want to be a part of that, or they'll give them pause, like, wait a minute, people care about this place? Okay, maybe there's something to this community. So I think, we're talking about projects that are kind of big, and some are very long reaching, but I think that there are even small things that your committees can be doing that speak to all the buckets that we're referencing. You can inspire and educate, you can connect to resources, you can do small things like anything from a cleanup day to helping your businesses plant flowers and pots in front of their businesses, or music or whatever. It's being active in continuing to curate the space that your downtown occupies, however makes sense for your community.
Well, and just meeting your neighbors, that's been big for us. Like, we feel like we're in a community now. We come down on Saturdays, we work on our property, we talk to our neighbors, and they're like our little downtown family, and it feels good.
Well said again, all of you. I'm honestly more excited about design than I was before this conversation, just how you're talking about, the power of some of those visual impacts in just kind of creating energy, but also like that invitation for people to experience and get involved. There's definitely something to that, the visual cues of kind of just good vibes, if I can say that. Mm-hmm. So with the time that we have left, and Stephanie, you really kind of got into this already, but if you were specifically to talk to a Main Street program that is either starting a design committee for the first time, or as a lot of programs are kind of in this like reboot stage right now, what would you tell them in terms of what to prioritize or where to start?
Ooh, where to start? Something that we did earlier this year on the rainiest day, the coldest day, unintentionally, we did a walking tour of downtown. We, the committee and a few other folks that were interested, we had a map and we walked downtown. We walked the side streets, the streets that aren't considered on the main drag. We went through alleyways, we pointed things out. And I think that gave us a really good kind of rough inventory of the physical state and the experience of downtown. I know that even as a director, I go and walk to folks, but I'm not always pausing and just kind of just taking in. And that showed us things that from a maintenance perspective, but also got us talking about, wow, for example, we have a street in downtown, First Street, that is 25 miles an hour, but people go like 30 or 40 because the street's designed to go 40 miles an hour on it. And I think by walking it as a pedestrian for that particular location, it had us talking about things that I don't think we would have thought to think of in a meeting over Zoom or at a table or on a coffee shop. So go out and walk your district. If you're starting a committee or you're getting people who are on the fence about joining a startup committee or a reboot, do a walking tour and do them quarterly if you can. That's that. I know you guys just joined the committee. What made you guys want to get involved?
Yes, good, bad, and ugly tour. I like it.
Yeah, good, bad, and ugly tour. Absolutely.
I think the walking tour is a great example, Stephanie, as just a starting point and also an engagement tool. And yeah, we had a comment just now from Prosser, since attendees couldn't see that, suggesting a good, bad, and ugly tour, which we did in my program as well. So Conchetta and Carrie Ann, you know, being relatively new to the committee, what would you say, especially kind of gearing this toward the volunteers who might be watching this? Where would you suggest they start with their energy?
I think that choosing a particular project that they are very interested in, you know, is probably a good place to start. So instead of maybe having, you know, the chair delegate to different people, say, hey, well, what are you interested in? You know, tell me what project you're interested in, because they're more willing to put in, you know, the effort. It's more enjoyable as a volunteer to work on something that, you know, interests you. So find a project within the committee that you're really interested in and that will benefit everybody. You'll pour your heart into it and it will be great.
Well, and spend time getting to know each other too. I mean, we all have such different backgrounds and different ideas, and coming together and figuring out how to make those work has been actually a big part of the fun.
Yeah, it feels like it all boils down to relationships, because people want to get involved with this kind of thing most of the time to connect with other people, even if that's not necessarily their top priority as they would state it. So thank you for mentioning that. Stephanie, did you have kind of any closing thoughts on this before we round out this conversation?
Absolutely. From like a organizing your committee's perspective, I know it can feel really daunting if not all of your committees are performing the way that you want them to, or you see a committee struggling to figure out their mesh, their magic. I can only say patience and continuing to find that moment of passion. And it's amazing kind of what you might throw on the wall that sticks. And it's okay if sometimes your committees ebb and flow, and sometimes they might not have a big project they're focused on, but there's always something you can zero back to. And so, you know, for us at the beginning, we spoke about, we care about our community. I think you can take that approach regardless if it's design, economic vitality, or promotions. You love and care about the space that you spend your time in. And if you can always go back to that, I want this place to be better. We're all in agreement. We want to make our community the best it can be, and then start from there. And whether it's a small project or it's a big project, getting people together that care about the same thing, a group of, what to paraphrase Margaret Mead, a small group of people can change the world. That's your committees.
It's very motivating. And it's a really wonderful experience to be a volunteer or a staff member with this kind of thing, because you do get to see change and you get to know that you were part of it. So thanks to everybody who participated today. Extra big thanks to the three of you. We just loved working with Kennewick a little bit more through this 90-day plan. And so we will actually, this is a good note for everybody, later this summer, we will have case studies available for all of the 4 police activation initiatives that we've been working with. I definitely encourage folks to check out Kennewick's, because there's so much good kind of learning that the whole network can share there. So this will be recorded if you would like to share it with other folks who aren't able to attend live today. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the outreach conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bye.